Hi everybody, welcome to class with your reluctant YouTube professor. Today we're going to be talking about literature reviews and how to do research, becoming familiar with your local library resource site, and how to identify and find peer-reviewed articles. I'm going to be going through this particular lecture video a little bit slower. We're going to go through in detail. So what I would like you to do now is to pause the video for a second and take out your workbook so you can work along while I explain things. So as always, we start with where we are in the process, and we have already moved into step 2, which is review the literature, located right here. By the time we finish the semester, we will have made it all the way through into the 8th step, and you would be ready to repeat and move on with this research or to conduct a real research project from a little more expansive research project or an in-depth research project after this. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of a literature review is that it's a slow, time-consuming process. You often hear about people saying that they're doing research in academia, and what they might mean is that they're doing the literature review component of research. Sometimes people will say literature review, lit review, or simply just research. And so what they're doing and what the general goal of a literature review is to become familiar with what the experts have to say on the topic that you're interested in. This is why we do research. We're looking to comb through all of the databases and all of the academic peer-reviewed literature and read through it so that we become experts before we start conducting our own research experiments or tests. So because of this, it's not something that you can rush through. You need to take your time, and you need to show kind of a general interest in actually sitting down multiple times, different places, and being able to focus on trying to find articles that all match with each other. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to compile research, compile, read, and summarize all of the literature on a precise topic. Now, for an introduction research class, we wouldn't have you do that. That would be more along the lines of a thesis or a PhD project. But when we first start doing this, we still want to have the main goal of knowing how to find databases, which databases are appropriate for the type of field that you're in, how to find research that you're looking for on your general subject area within those databases, how to read and compile that research, because there's a way in which you would read research. It's not like you would read a casual, maybe novelty book. It's not the same way. And that you're able to make the connection between one article and other articles in a way that you can compile a list of articles that are all on one precise topic. And when you have that and you've completed another paper summarizing, reviewing, and critiquing all of that research, that is called a literature review. What a literature review is not, and this is where a lot of people get confused or really want to push their ideas in, is that it's not to confirm your preconceived notions or the bias that you have in terms of where you think the answer to your question should go. You're not going to force the already written, published in journal articles to say what you want your answer to be. So I always warn students that you may then have to shift your ideas, because your ideas are preconceived notions about what is out there, and what the actual literature in academia says may be slightly different. So it's easier to start to kind of shift your goals in terms of your topic and institutions than it is to try to force articles that don't exist into a question that you would like to address. So a few guidelines for conducting research. some really important ones. And let me list them first. Research guidelines that give yourself enough time, be critical of your investigation, track your searches, be comprehensive, and be flexible. So one of the main problems that students face that causes them a lot of frustration is that they skip these earlier steps. Because these earlier steps kind of seem like you're working and you're not getting anywhere, you're not actually writing your paper, you're actually having to do pre-work before you do your paper, pre-writing, pre-research, compiling information, taking notes before you can actually write a summary paper. Students often get frustrated and they want to write their paper from the get-go. This in a literature review is going to cause you a lot of headache and stress and make it really, really difficult. And it's really not going to save you any time from the person who is doing it in the way that they should be doing it with all the pre-writing and pre-research. If you follow this process, what you're going to find is that your final product is going to be clear, it's going to be organized, it's going to be more comprehensive of what's out there, and it's actually going to be a lot easier to write. If you're methodical in following these steps, you'll have every single component that you need, and your paper in the end will only be about you piecing that information together. The paper becomes basically very easy to put together and write. So let's start with guideline 1. Give yourself enough time. You will want to devote as much time as you can possibly get into sitting in front of the computer at the library resource site for your school and searching through the databases, especially because this is your first time. It takes practice to get through these databases. They're not like searching Google. It's not easy. So you want to learn how to search different databases, learn which ones are most appropriate for you. And you want to also keep a log of every time that you sit down, when you sat down, what databases you used, what type of keywords you use. And you want to keep doing your research until you hit the deadline, not until you hit the number of articles that the teacher is offering as the minimum that they ask you to do. And the reason why this is the case is because often we may find articles, or we can even pull articles and print them and hand them to our teacher, but that doesn't mean that they're actually related to each other. Especially when we're a new researcher, we often will pull a variety of articles, and they're on numerous different topics. If not 2, it can be 3, 4, even 5, even with just as few as 10 articles. Until you become a little bit more practiced at it, it's about spending that time becoming familiar with the research. It's just as important to read and discard an article as it is to read and keep an article. So again, as much time as you can. I always recommend a few time slots of 1 to 3 hours every single day where you can put your time and effort into your research process. So I'd like you to take a moment and write those down in your workbook. When does it work for you? Guideline number 2, and a very important one, is to be very critical of your investigation. So scientists and academics, when they're doing a literature review, they're turning a very critical eye into their research. Everything has to be peer reviewed. Essentially, there are 3 main types of sources. There are what we would call general or tertiary sources, secondary sources, and primary sources. When you're doing a literature review, you are looking for primary sources. So general sources are things like articles, blogs, cover stories, other casual sources, excerpts, little news clips, those kinds of things. These are not appropriate to include in a literature review. These types of articles are not peer reviewed. They have often information that's not appropriate, and they're not based on research at all. They're based on somebody's usually opinion piece, news piece. It's more for entertainment. If you find that the article that you are seeing may say what you want it to say, but it's a news clip. It's 2 to 3 pages long. It's a really nice, comfy, easy read. Has beautiful pictures in it. You probably have a general source, and it's not appropriate for your research. Secondary sources. These articles are articles on primary sources. So they tend to be a little more primary or academic in nature, and they offer a lot of general information that might point you in the direction of research that you actually can use. So what that means is that they may include primary source research. So look at what they're talking about and look at the sources they're using, and a great place to find research that's peer-reviewed that you might want to include is actually in the reference section of the articles that you already have in your hand. So what types of articles are secondary sources? Secondary sources include things like government reports. They may include a literature review of other literature. It's just a lit review, doesn't have an actual experiment or test in it. They may be a thesis. We wouldn't include that necessarily, even though it's kind of on the verge, but it's probably not published, so therefore not peer-reviewed. These are the types of things that are secondary sources. While they have decent information and in some cases can be included, for the most part, we don't include them when we're doing a research project and a lit review. On the other hand, the one that you do want to find is called a primary source. So a primary source means that the source is credible. It's an expert on the topic. They've been published, which means that they've been reviewed, or their research has been reviewed by other experts on the topic. And that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to learn how to locate these types of primary sources in our databases through our library schools library website. And we're going to learn how to synthesize this information and put it into a paper of our own called a literature review for our own purposes. If you find an article that's very related, a primary source that's very related to your research, you do want to take note of the reference section, because it's very likely that they will have, that particular reference section will have other sources that you can use as well. Something to add to before I move on is that a good way to identify a peer-reviewed article is that it is generally going to be somewhere between 20 and 30 pages long. It's almost always 20 pages long. It's going to have the intro, it's going to have a methods section, it's going to have its own lit review, it's going to have a conclusion, and it may or may not have its own statistical findings, depending on whether or not it's qualitative or quantitative. Okay, so how to find your peer-reviewed primary sources. So for Fullerton College, this is their website homepage, and I'd like you to click on that now and take a moment to look through their website. You're going to be looking into the databases in here. So I'm not showing it here, but this is kind of the lower half of it. And what I would like you to do first is to text or email the librarian and ask for a 30-minute long session with the librarian so that they can give you the basic information on how to do research, what databases are good for sociological research, how to navigate the library source for our school, and what you can do to kind of facilitate some tips and tricks on how to find the articles that you're looking for. So you're probably going to roll your eyes at me, but I'm going to tell you that the best way to start your online research is offline. So you should start before you even step into that online library. You need to have a few things already set up for you to be successful. So I give you a little sheet in your workbook, and you can find it below this section. And what I would like you to do is rewrite your research question. Identify again the topics, groups, roles, relationships, institutions connected to your research question, and write all of those into the box. And then I would like you to brainstorm words related to your topic or your groups or your roles or relationships. So for example, if you're interested in gender in the workplace, what are some actual terms besides the word gender that would work for the word gender, right? So we have gender, men, women, sex, that type of thing, right? So you want to keep going down the list. The best thing that you can do is to get somebody in your household or somebody in the class to brainstorm with you, because you're going to come up with a lot more questions or terms that you can use if you have somebody to actually speak with. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like doing this, but this does facilitate the research and makes it a lot easier. It's not like searching Google. You can't just type in 1 or 2 words and everything you need pops right up. It's first or second on the list. You could spend hours doing this type of research and come up with nothing. And it's not necessarily wasted time. Either that means that there is actually nothing on that topic, or it means that the way in which you are searching, or the databases you're searching, or the terms you're using are not appropriate to find the topic that you're specifically interested in. So what you're going to do is you're going to search your library website for an article. So first I'd like you to locate a database pertinent to your field. And so you'll probably be able to be offered a few questions or a few examples when you meet with your librarian. Choose your database, and then choose a few of the key terms that you're going to use and enter them into the text boxes. So there are not just key terms, but there's field selections, search modes, expanded search modes, and limitation markers. All of these things you should ask your librarian how to do. So key terms, those are the easy ones, right? Field selections, how does that work? Search modes, expanded search modes, or expanded markers, limitation markers. These are all things you need to ask the librarian in your 30-minute session. I mean, it's important to know that you can use the same key terms, but if you use them in different databases or with different fields selections or search modes, you're going to come up with different articles. Okay, so let's give it a try. So go into your library site and find the databases. Once you've located the databases, I would like you to find the database called SOC Abstract, SOC Abstracts. Once you get into SOC Abstracts, I want you to give this a try. Search the key terms Disney and gender in all text. And then I would like you to expand your search mode to apply related words. And then I would like you to limit your search to peer-reviewed and full text. And then post in the box what you found. 1 or 2 or 3 of the articles that you found. Now changed all text to title and remove the apply related words. And then copy and paste what you found this time into the text box. So what this exercise is meant to show you is that library search engines work on not just the words, the keywords that you're using, but on the way that you search those particular keywords. So how you're finding the articles may be expanded or limited based not only on your key terms, but on other related search types as you use them for different databases or different university sites. Okay, so guideline 3, track your searches, and this is the one often, I don't know if this is widely ignored because maybe sometimes we forget to track our searches, but more often it tends to appear that my students have just written in a bunch of different dates and pretended that they did searches on different dates. That's what it looks like. But what I would like you to do is to separate your research out so that you're not fatigued trying to do all of it all at once. You'll have a lot more success if you're actually going through and trying to read through these abstracts, a little bit about the title and putting them together, as opposed to trying to find 10 articles quick in the last, hour or two before you have to show them to your professor. So what you want to do is every time you sit down to do research, you want to pull out your database or your track searches sheet. And I have two posted. One is in your workbook and one is a printable one, and you're free to use either one. Everybody's a little bit different. I prefer to print mine and set it next to my computer because when I'm searching online, I really enjoy the flexibility of just being able to write down how I'm doing my key searches. And then you can always just take a snip or a picture of that and post that with your workbook. So here should be the date that you actually did the research. This should be the key terms that you use. So here I'm showing I used Soc Index, which is a database, full text. So I had searched full text Soc Index, and I had searched mental illness in America and healthcare access. This word here is a lot more important than you probably realize. And or not are all options. And so these are the different citations that I found. These citations, you can just simply copy and paste them into your database or your tracking sheet. Don't worry if they are ASA correct. It does not matter if they're APA, ASA correct. You're just copying and pasting it for future use. At this point, I also like to do something else, which is I like to save the articles that I think I'm going to keep and want to use to my flash drive. So I don't put them on my computer, and I also definitely never leave them in the saved section at the school site because that's how I've lost them multiple times. And then I don't leave them in my computer because it just, you end up with quite a few of them. And I just like to keep it separate in its own little section. You can also email it to yourself, but again, that's not going to be as easy to access and navigate through when you're ready to pull out the ones that you want to use. Again, this does not have to be ASA or APA correct. Do try to make sure that you are, listing all of the key terms that you use every single time. And that way you're not doing the same search over and over again, because you can see last time, even if you use the same keywords, I can go to a different database, I can use a different connecting word, or I can be using it in title only, that type of thing. Okay, so it's your turn. So record the date. I would like you to try to do this for yourself today. Start with maybe a little 30-minute session to become familiar. Record your date, record the key terms you intend on using in the database, and if you start using more, include those, and then go hunting for an article, one article on your related topic. Skim the titles, and if you find a title related to your topic, open it, read the abstract. As soon as you read the abstract, which is a little tiny summary at the very top, usually italicized and centered, you will know if it's related to your topic or not. If it isn't, discard it and move on. If it does seem to fit, record the citation in your tracker sheet, add it to your file. In my case, I would add it to my flash drive file. And I always look to see if it has a full article available. And so most of the time today, when we're doing research, the full article is already there and available. So if it's available, go ahead and download the entire article and save it to your flash drive. If it's not, you generally can just put in a request for the article and it comes back rather quickly. I love to say, in my day, we had to walk to school both ways uphill in the snow, right? So the research equivalent of this was that in my day, we had to wait 6 to 8 weeks for a librarian to pull the actual article for us before we can get it. Think about that, 6 to 8 weeks. So we would wait 2 months for an article we requested so that we could read it, and sometimes it still wasn't an article that we would need. So if you do find an article, now it's time for you to be able to identify if it's peer-reviewed or not. So is this suitable? Can you locate the academic journal of your article? It should be published, right? So what I would like you to do if you find it is to highlight it. So it needs to be, it'll say journal of, it'll probably be on that cover page, that front cover page prior to the abstract. It's going to be in the upper right, upper middle, upper left, or all the way at the bottom, usually bottom middle. Can you locate the references? Is there a works cited or references for your article? If there's no references, this is not a peer-reviewed article. If it's not published in a journal, chances are it's not a peer-reviewed article. And then can you locate the methods section? So the methods section may actually say methods as the top of the methods section, but it might not. What a methods section is it tells you the method that they used for conducting the research or for collecting the data. So if it's a qualitative research project, they're going to tell you it may be a description and the information on how they did interviews. They did interviews with 36 families over 2 years, focusing on family relationships between mothers and daughters in Hispanic communities. That's what it's going to sound like. If it's a quantitative research methods section, chances are it's going to give you the databases, the data sets it's searched. It's going to have numerical information. It might even have a few graphs in there. It may have the list of different types of statistical analysis that it runs. So I'm not asking you to interpret any of this as of yet. All I'm asking you to do is see if you can find and identify a method section. So again, I would recommend asking the librarian to help you identify a peer-reviewed article using these 3 things. Ask them to help you find the journal, locate the references, and locate the methods section of the article that you're finding or that they're using, and this will help you greatly when it comes to doing your own research. So if you find that it was published in an academic journal, it includes a complete reference list. It includes a description of how the project or the experiment was conducted, a method section. Then it sounds like you probably have a peer-reviewed primary source, and you can circle yes. And then the next question is this close enough to my research question that it could fit under the umbrella topic of my research, yes or no? And if you answered yes to both of those, congratulations, you can keep that one. So now you would want, now that you have that one and you know that it works for you and you know it's peer reviewed, you have one last little step that helps you with finding more articles that are similar. So you want to take a moment to look at the keywords. Usually below the abstract or somewhere near the top of the article, you will find a set of keywords. Take a look at those keywords and see which ones work for you. So it's finding little lists of those words that you were having to brainstorm for yourself earlier. They did the same thing, right? So they have some of the keywords that are related to their topic. So look through, and here's kind of a little gold mine of different keywords that you can use to help you find your research. Put down your date that you're doing this, that you found this article, the keywords that you used, and the citation that you found. This brings us to our last guideline. Guideline number 4, be comprehensive. So when I say be comprehensive, what I usually mean is you're trying to locate all of the current peer-reviewed articles in your very specific topic. I know that's not going to happen in terms of this research project because this, for most of you, is your first research project you've ever attempted to conduct, and that's totally fine. We don't start driving a race car. We start, in our mom's Volvo, if we're lucky, right? Kind of kicking it in and out of gear and destroying the clutch for, whoever is generous enough to help us learn how to drive. So it's the same thing with research, right? You don't get in and know everything and know what you're doing and being able to do it super easy. It takes a ton of practice to do this. So be patient with yourself. Be kind and forgiving to yourself. Try not to get frustrated. If you look at the articles, you will notice that the typical peer-reviewed research article contains about 40 sources. So since you're going to be conducting a miniature literature review, you are going to be trying to find somewhere between 10 and 14 articles on your topic. And the goal is, once you find one, is you're trying to find as many as you can that are as closely related to each other. And so I'm going to have you locate somewhere between 10 and 14. And what that means is that when you bring those articles to me and we talk about them, chances are you're only going to be able to keep somewhere between 5 and 7. Almost inevitably, if you do your work and you really try hard, you'll get to keep about half of them, because generally you'll have actually 2 or maybe even 3 topics. And this is what happens to us when we're first doing research. It might be related in a general sense, but as you start to read through the articles, you'll notice that there may be 2 subtopics within your particular topic. And so if you collect 20 articles, chances are you're going to only end up with maybe 10 that will work for you. If you collect 10, you're only going to end up with 5. If you whiz through and you try to just collect 10 whatever articles so that you have something, chances are you're going to end up with 1 article in your hand and you're going to have to go back to the drawing board. So just try not to do that to yourself or to me, because I hate leaving somebody with that. Now, sometimes it happens on accident, but most of the time that happens because we don't, unfortunately, devote enough time to research, because it's not fun and it's not easy and it's not as casual as watching YouTube, which most of us would rather be doing, right? So give yourself enough time. Do it at least, at least once a day or once every other day throughout the week. Try to have sessions. I have here 2 to 4 hour sessions, and that's generally for graduate students. A 1 to 2 hour session would be perfectly fine. For the level at which you're doing research now, you're going to try to collect approximately 10 to 14 very closely related articles so that you could end up with at least 5. And if you start to feel like you're reading the same article over and over again, then you're on the right track. Good for you. Very happy. If they seem like they're super divergent and they're going in different directions, go back to the drawing board, pick one that you're more comfortable with, that you like, or you would like to follow that path, and stick with trying to find articles related to that one. Be flexible with yourself. So if you can only do 30-minute sessions, do a 30-minute session. But try to do them as often as possible. The literature is not going to change. You're not going to make what is already written there appear and say what you want it to say. So be flexible with your ideas, your research question, and your topic, because what you might find is what the academics have to say will lead you in a direction that is totally workable and that you're very comfortable with and you might be very interested in. And so I always say, let it lead you. Don't fight the research, because you're not going to win. Let the research take the lead and you go with the flow. So if you're finding a particular topic over and over and over again, and you've found a ton of that research or articles on that particular topic, but it's not exactly what you wanted, but you're interested in it, just move your ideas or your topic towards that direction because it's there, right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. You don't have to find something that's not there because you came up with an idea last week. No matter how good your research question is, if the literature isn't out there, you're just banging your head up against the wall. And of course, feel free to modify your tracking sheet. Don't worry about editing or keeping like the workbook in some kind of particular order, because it is going to get all jumbled and move around. Okay, so your actual homework for this particular section is, or your actual assignment is to do your research and to keep your research question tracking sheet available for me to review. So you want to write your research question again in your tracking sheet. I recommend trying to write your question down without looking it up first. So write it down, go back and look it up, because you're trying to recall and really get to know your question. By the end of the semester, you won't have to look at it, you'll know it. Prepare and use your tracking sheet. You can find one below. There's both a printable and non-printable one. Always have your research question and keywords front and center before you get onto the library source, because you're just wasting your time if you don't have your keywords set up for yourself, if you're not focused in on your research question with you. So that's one of the reasons why I like having the printable one. It's there, it's on my desk while I'm working. Scan the databases for potential articles. So at this point, the teacher, the librarian should have probably given you somewhere between 2 and 5 databases that are very workable. So start with, 2 databases, or start with 1 database per day, and to see what you can find, what articles you can find, you'll see that you have more luck with some than others. Read first the title, abstract, and findings. So as soon as you read the title, sometimes you can kick out, you're like, okay, that's not it, right? If the title works, read the title and the abstract. So the abstract's a little 100-word, 150-word summary. Then you know, okay, I need to kick that one out, or I'm going to keep that one. If you're going to keep that one, go to the end of the article and skim the findings. Quickly go through the findings and see what it has to say. Then go to step 5, determine if it's peer-reviewed or a primary source. So first of all, if you have a title, an abstract, and findings, that's a pretty good indication that it's a peer-reviewed article source. But even though it has that, you still want to double check. So the next step is to make sure that it's coming out of a journal, make sure that it has references, and then make sure it has a method section. And then what you want to do is try to identify if it's qualitative or quantitative. So I don't expect you to know for sure now, but this is a good time to just say, okay, I think that's quantitative, I think that's qualitative. And it starts to become more familiar. Now remember, quantitative is statistical analysis and qualitative is open-ended analysis. So it's usually verbal observation, interviews, those types of things. And then once you have decided that that it's a primary source and it's related to your topic and related to the other articles, because that's important too, review the key terms for any new ones, put that down on your tracking sheet, and then record the APA or ASA citation. I recommend trying to do the ASA citation and download the article. So APA is American Psychological Association. So this one is generally for the graduate students. We're in a social class, so we want to do ASA citation. It doesn't have to be perfect. I generally would just copy and paste the citations at this point. I'm not worried about the citations being technically correct at this point. And then I also download the article to my flash drive, my computer, and keep them all in the same place so that you're not having to hunt things down. And then last but not least, flip all the way to the back, review the reference section for leads to new search term. So chances are you'll be able to go through the references and be able to highlight titles of articles that are pretty closely related to your topic and obviously related to the article you're holding, and then use those titles with the information that they have, because those are going to be cited appropriately, right? So you can have the title, the author, the year, and you can go back into the databases and find those articles. And then you repeat every single one. So our goal here is to find 10. I think that's it. So have a great day. Oh, one last thing. So here's your tracking sheet. Oh, and looking forward. So this is kind of like the reminder that I know this seems like a lot of work and you don't get a paper out of it, but this is your pre-writing, this is the research, this is the setup. So the hard work you do now pays off for you exponentially in the weeks to follow, because if you aren't knowledgeable about the research that you want to conduct, you can't create a good research proposal. If you don't spend the time searching through databases, you can't write a lit review. You can't start a lit review by writing it and then try to find articles to fit into your preconceived notions. You need to start by finding articles and then shifting your ideas about your topic to fit what the experts have to say. So our goal is 10 articles. Read first the title, abstract, and findings. Take just a few notes. If you need to do annotations, you want to do those in the margins of the articles. I always recommend printing, not doing this online, because we don't retain or understand in the same way if we do it online. But I'm not going to force you for this particular class to print them, at least not yet. Look at the method section, determine if it's quantitative or qualitative, make a note on that section. Skim the literature review, there will be a literature review in this article, and make notes regarding those commonalities, so what's common to your topic and that. And you see here, I'm not telling you to read the whole article, I'm saying read some of it, look at some of it, skim some of it. Once you've done all of that, separate your articles based on similarity to each other. You should emerge with approximately 5 articles that can be on one topic, one precise topic. But you need to be ready for next week to present these articles. I say in class, it will probably be in between the weeks Flipgrid again. So you'll be presenting your articles in this. Have a nice day.